Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's session. My name's Robin. I'm the Technical Director of Man and Machine here in the UK. And as always, it's a pleasure to have you with us this Thursday afternoon. Afternoon to those of you that are joining us on YouTube Live, as well as those of you that are joining us on Zoom. We've got a few bits of new technology, as you may notice. We've got some clever things going on in here now. So I apologise if things aren't quite as crisp and clear as they usually are. We've had a few little niggles over the last half an hour or so, but hopefully you can see me. Hopefully there's no audio delay, and hopefully everything's coming through a-okay. Apologies if they are. We'll try and fix those delays as we go through the session. So today we're going to be talking about Autodesk Forma. But before we do so, I want to do maybe a little bit of precursor. So we call these sessions the M word. We air them on Thursday afternoons at 2 p.m. I'd love to say it's every Thursday. Unfortunately, it's not. But do follow us on LinkedIn and keep an eye on our socials, because we typically will tell you when we're going to go live. And we put these sessions up with a tip or a trick or a how-to or a new product introduction, or generally something that will hopefully help you in your day-to-day job with an Autodesk piece of software, whether it's Inventor on the fabrication and manufacturing side, whether it's Revit, whether it's AutoCAD, or one of the many tools and functions or features of those applications. So really, it's a chance to have a virtual coffee break and hopefully show you something exciting. Those of you that are watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to our channel and turn on those notifications so that you can see when we put new content up or when we go live. As I say, we typically try and go live, let's say at least a couple of times a month, and we put content up most weeks, and they're always to do with something from the Autodesk channel. So hopefully if you're joining us today from the construction industry, there are many different pieces of content on our channel that should interest you. So before I share my screen and start going through Forma, maybe a little bit of an introduction as to what Forma does and what it's all about. I'm personally quite new to this technology with Forma. I never used Spacemaker, which is what it was known as before Autodesk acquired it and developed it and rebranded it. But Forma as a piece of as an application is a fantastic piece of software that enables you to do site planning, master planning, and maybe some feasibility studies around a site. It's all cloud-based, so it is a software as a service. And because of that, it's fast. It's not reliant on the laptop equipment or the hardware that you've got to do things like your wind analysis or your solar analysis or anything like that. It does everything up in the cloud through a browser of choice. So whether you're using Chrome or Edge, as I'm going to be using today, or maybe you're on a Mac rather than Windows and you're using Safari, pretty much the commonly used browsers will work, and it will allow you to use a software as a service workflow to do that master planning or site planning. Having been in the Autodesk channel for approximately 20 years, I'm really excited about this technology. I've seen what's happened on the fabrication side with Autodesk Fusion, which 15 years ago they released this technology preview as a cloud-based application for designing in the manufacturing space, designing of a product. And now to see the likes of Forma being developed and enhanced with so much functionality very, very quickly, I'm really excited to see where it goes and where it takes us over, the months and years ahead. So really useful application and very, very easy to use. And without further ado, I'm just going to share my screen and we'll go through it because there's quite a lot to show. I'm probably going to be talking for, let's say, anywhere between 45 minutes and an hour-ish. There's quite a lot to go through, but it's a live session. Post your questions in the YouTube chat. Post your questions in the Zoom chat. Forgot what it was called for a moment there. Post your questions in the Zoom chat, and we'll feed back to you live throughout the session. So let's just get myself smaller into the corner. I'm going to pre-apologize. This is a new camera and I am very shiny. We obviously need to do something in here about our lighting. But hey ho, let's share my screen, which should come across, and we're ready to go. So as I say, Forma is software as a service, and it's included as part of your AEC collection from Autodesk. Whether you subscribe to a collection or you're subscribing to Forma as part of the AEC collection, you can access it through your browser. Now I'm going to show you how you would access it for the first time if you've never used Forma before. You would go to your Autodesk account, which is manage.autodesk.com, and you would sign in with your Autodesk ID and your Autodesk password. And clearly, the gremlins are against us because it's already not working. Let's just refresh my page, manage.autodesk.com, and sign in with my Autodesk ID and my Autodesk password. There we go. You might need to do this as an administrator the first time round, so speak to your license administrator and get them to come in and start the access, because the first time you access Forma, what it's going to do is it's going to ask you to set up a hub and what you want the hub to be called and who you want access to it. I can't show you that today because my hub's already set up, but we go into all products and services, and then from there we're going to scroll the page or use the search functionality until we find Forma. So I'm going to go ahead and do a search for Forma, and then we've got this access button. I'm going to hit that and it's going to take me to and sign me into my Forma hub. Now, once you're there, if it's the first time that you've done this, you'll have a couple of, let's say, wizard screens to go through. What do you want your hub to be called, so on and so forth. But once you're there, we're displayed with a fairly straightforward interface. I've purposely archived off all of my projects, so this is a completely blank environment. And what you can see in this home screen or dashboard is I've got the ability to create a project, or I've got the ability to look at some of the learning resources, such as the ability to open a demo project or a sample project to have a look at and have a play in. In this particular area, there's not much to it. You've got a list of projects, I have none, and you have a list of members, I have one, and you have some hub settings. There isn't really much to show, but what I will say is your hub settings are really important from a support perspective because you can get access to your hub ID and things like that, and an administrator can also control who within your organization can see your hub by default within your company. Also within your members area, you can very quickly add and edit your users. Forma has three types of users that you can have. You can have a standard user, which is able to create content. We call those a creator. You can have an admin user who can administrate the site, and you can have a viewer who is able to view the information. If you don't have a subscription, you will automatically become a viewer. To be an admin or a creator, you have to have a subscription. And in your projects area, it will show you all of your projects. Much like anyone that is familiar with Autodesk docs, it's impossible to delete information out of Forma. All we can do is archive. So if you accidentally delete something, it will only ever sit in an archive where you can select something. Can't see the screen, oh, thank you. That is interesting. Why can't you see the screen? Give me 2 seconds. I'm going to go off camera. I'm just going to walk over to the other side of the room. I'll keep talking. It seems like we've got a bit of an issue. Thank you, Richard and Grant on the Zoom for logging that. Let me come and see what's going on with my capture card. The capture card seems to have stopped. Okay, so let me go back to a small camera without the screen share. Apologies for this. Bear with me. I'm just going to make sure that that camera doesn't follow me around the room, so I'm not waving at you. I'm just going to turn the tracking off. I'm just going to come over here and restart my capture card. Please bear with me. It seems to have dropped its lunch, and then I will pick it back up again, and hopefully everything will have reset and everything will work. If not, I'll just change a few plugs around and get it back working. The joy of new technology and new functionality. Okay, looks like that's back up. Hopefully, if I come over here and click this one again, followed by this one again, with a bit of luck, we can see my live screen and we can see it moving. I'm gonna wait until I get a thumbs up from someone on the Zoom. Yep, perfect. Apologies, thank you for the feedback. Clearly, I kicked one of these many wires that are around me. Okay, so let's just get to it. I'm going to start a new project. Now, what Forma will do when you start a new project is it's going to ask you where the project is going to be. So we can type in a coordinate or some coordinates from somewhere in the world. We can type in a postcode, a location, a city, or an address. So for the purpose of this, I'm going to do two things in today's demo. Firstly, I'm going to show you somewhere that's fairly built up just to show you what Forma can do. And then we're going to strip that back into a much simpler area. So to begin with, I'm just going to type in London. We're going to go straight into central London. And I'm just going to pick the default area that comes up for the purpose of this initial demonstration. So let's maybe include a couple of bridges and some of the River Thames here. And what we're going to do is click Confirm Map Area. Now this is just to show you the level of content that you can get out of the box. And then I'm going to strip it back and go through the demo proper to show you the active workflow. So just bear with me for a few moments while we go through this first bit. So when we're working with Forma, as I said several times, it's using the cloud. So it's going to give us the ability to, I'm going to use the word order, several pieces of reference material that you can use and reuse in your project. That reference material, although I'm using the word order, as you can see on my screen, is free of charge. There's no additional fees included in that, but we have to tell the system that we want it because it uses resources. Otherwise, it doesn't let you have it. And I'm going to say that I want to have some building data from the OpenStreetMap. I can control the area again. I'm going to leave it as it is and press order. I can then say that I want to have some topography. It gives you LiDAR information by default. We can also pick up Esri, which could have better terrain. You can also use flat terrain if you want to, but I'm going to say that I want to use Esri just to potentially get a slightly higher resolution terrain. It's pretty flat around there, but I'll show you it anyway. And we'll also get some data from the OpenStreetMap with regards to roads. If you didn't want to pull in building data, we can also get boundary information from the HM Land Registry as well. as well as importing data in Mesh or IFC or DXF or image-based information should you want it. What we then have is an interface that we can zoom with our middle mouse button. We can orbit by holding down our right mouse button. It takes a bit of getting used to as a Revit user. And we can also pan with our middle mouse. And you can see here that we've got a little bit of topography and something that looks about right. I'm going to come across into my library of things that I've ordered, and I'm going to add my roads into the canvas. It will look at all of the available roads, allow me to make a selection for roads that I want to add, and then I can add them in. Select the ones that you want and choose add. You'll notice that the roads have now been converted into roads that I can select and change properties on. I want to replace my standard LiDAR terrain with Esri terrain. So again, I'm going to choose to place that in the canvas and update the terrain. And then I'm going to choose to bring in some buildings. So again, I'm just going to choose to bring those straight into the canvas. It will give me the ability to make some selections, and it will bring them in and allow me to work on them. It's not going to bring across everything, and the detail level is literally block-based. It's like paper modeling. So you'll see that the London Eye over here is a great big rectangle. But actually, if I'd have extended this a little bit further down to Westminster and the Houses of Parliament, for example, you do get a fairly good representative shape for most things. And actually, the heights are pretty good in representation. We've even got some simple shapes for boats here. You get something that's pretty good. I wanted to show you a built-up area because I'm not going to work on a built-up area for my actual project. I'm going to go into an area that is completely empty. But I wanted to show you what you can get quite quickly from a site planning perspective just by using the detail that the system is giving you. What I'm actually going to do now is strip this back and go through it again slower so that you can see this step by step. And I want to choose somewhere that's got a few hills and things like that. So I'm just going to type in the Peak District here in the UK, beautiful part of the world. And I'm just going to go and pick up the Peak District National Park. And if I just have a little look around here, see what we've got, maybe up here. There's a nice little bit of water here and not much going on. I can come and choose a satellite view just to get a picture of what's what. It looks like we've got maybe an old quarry or something here, perhaps. And actually, for the example that I'm going to run through, that'll be quite a nice area because we could maybe take this area of land here and look at developing that area of land. So I can choose an area of land, and this will give me a kilometres square size up here. And as you can see, we can zoom in and out to make it bigger or smaller. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so that we're working on maybe about a kilometre square. That is limited. You can't get too close and you can't get too far out for obvious reasons. But I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to choose confirm. And then once that is confirmed, it's going to take me through that same process that you just saw a few moments ago. So we want to put some contextual data into our project. And we do that through our library. And as I say, it uses the word order, and the way I foresee this going, if we look several months or years down the line, is we might have other data that we can purchase to get maybe higher quality or higher accuracy or whatever it might be. So for now, we're going to do all of the default off-the-shelf stuff. So we're going to order the same information that we did within the London example, but in this, this more rural example. I'm going to get the Esri higher resolution topography, which I'm just going to leave as default. Arguably, in reality, I would bump this down to just the area that I want to work on. We're going to pick up any roads that we can see in and around the area, because I do want to have some site roads that we can use throughout this, this project. And I don't think there are any, but I'm just going to check to see if there are any buildings that we can use that might help us in our feasibility studies or for planning or whatever else it might be. And that, for the example today, is probably absolutely fine. We're going to then use our library to bring in information. So we know that we want our LiDAR scan, our Esri scan, sorry. So let's bring that straight into the canvas. It will take a couple of seconds to load. Obviously, this is all cloud-based, so it's not really internet dependent. It's just doing it all server-side. So this is just going to take a few seconds. It gives us a preview. We've got something that looks pretty nice from a topo perspective, and I'm going to choose to update my model terrain. And I've already got a fairly flat bed here of which to work on, which means I don't have to go too much in detail for this session with regards to building pads or anything like that. I'm going to preview the roads that it's picked up. A lot of these are not, they're not major roads, so it's not really picked up on any. So actually, for the purpose of this, to add this one road, I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to cancel it. You saw that work earlier in the London example. And I'm just going to check to see if I've got any buildings. I think there might be one off just in the corner somewhere. Again, yes, it's off the screen. Maybe there's one just here, tiny little building it's picked up on. Again, I'm not going to bring it in. There's no point for the purpose of this example, but we do have a really nice topo that we can start with. And literally, as simply as that, we are in a position and ready to be able to start working inside this environment. Before I start drawing too much or modeling too much, I want to spend just a few more moments talking about this section on the left-hand side, because we're currently working within a proposal. And as we come through the session later, we can duplicate and start comparing proposals. We've seen our library where we can order and import data to place inside of our model. We also have extensions. We have both official Autodesk extensions and also third-party extensions that allow us to extend, hence the terminology there, extend the capability of Forma. I'm just going to download a few. You've got the Dynamo player, so you can actually open Revit with Dynamo for Revit and connect it to Forma, which is really nice. I'm going to add embodied carbon. It's a fairly hot topic in the digital construction space at the moment, so we're going to click add and then agree to the terms and conditions. I'm going to add a couple of third-party ones because I like them. Evolve Lab allows me to do some AI-based rendering once I've got my site, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to add that. I'm going to add the Autodesk parking demand calculator, which will look at my site and tell me how many parking spaces I may need. I'm going to add a third-party one called Plex Earth, which allows me to drape satellite imagery over my topography. I've already downloaded my Revit add-in, which reminds me, I'm going to open Revit in the background ready for later. You can also download a Rhino plugin if you're using Rhino. Let's add shadow studies. And finally, let's add Test Fit, which is a third-party parking calculation tool. Again, during this session, I kind of want to give you an example of several options and just show you what this thing can do, and you can kind of make your own mind up whether or not you like it. These are just published extensions. We can also add unpublished extensions. If you've got the extension ID, get it from the vendor, paste it in, and it will allow you to download it into your Forma. So I've got this topo. I might as well come in and start adding some satellite imagery. So let's activate Plex Earth. You can get a 30-day or so free trial of Plex. So I'm just going to type in and activate my code. You can just activate that with an email address to get access to doing 30 odd goes at this, or is it 30 days? Can't quite remember. But this will look at either Google Maps or Azure Maps, and it will bring that satellite imagery, pretty high res, onto your model, which I love. I think that's great, and you can toggle that on or off. Just the ability to do that quickly alone inside of Forma, thinking how difficult that can be to do inside of Revit, works really, really nicely. So I'm going to bring that in. And then I'm going to zoom into the area and start doing some work. So I'm going to move over to the right-hand side. And on the right-hand side of my screen, I've got several tools of which I can use. I'm a little bit conscious that the icon up there, Ellie, is covering some of the tools. So you might want to see if we can just remove that icon shortly and take that off, which will be on one of the top layers. Don't worry too much about it. So I've got these tools up here. Thank you very much. And each of these tools will open up a number of different options on the ribbon, let's call it that, it's not a ribbon, tool palette, on the right hand side. And I'm just going to show you some of these. I'm going to skip Explore for now, because it's my favourite one. And I'm going to show you that I can draw a basic building. So I'm going to come and draw a basic building based on the basic building tool. I can draw a line if I'm drawing some terraced buildings, for example, or specifically draw a house. But I'm going to choose a basic building. I'm going to go into a 2D view to look at this from the top down, and I can come in and start drawing lines, just like you would in AutoCAD or Revit, inside of here. I could also add primitive objects such as cubes and spheres. Cylinders. So I'm going to come in and just draw something that looks a bit like that. That'll do, and I'm going to press enter. You may have noticed I had pop-ups there. I could specify angles and I could specify distances with dynamic input, just like in AutoCAD or Revit. And what that's done is it's generated me a 3D building. Yes, it's very boxy. That's what this does. It's for planning and feasibility and master planning. So I've got a basic building. And the way it's put that together is based on the information on the tool palette on the right-hand side. I've drawn a shape, and it's defaulted to 4 stories. Each story is 3 meters apart. If I change the distance between stories to 5 meters, it makes the building bigger. If I change the number of stories to 10 stories, it makes the building higher. So I can come in and very quickly say, unrealistically by the way, that I want to put a 10-story building over here, each story being 5 meters apart. Each one of these is a dynamic floor. So if I select that building, not only is it giving me some basic area information, such as the gross internal areas, the floor plan areas and stuff like that, it's also showing me that I've got floor plans. I can click on the floor plan symbol here, or any individual floor plan, to change the floor plan live inside of Forma. Very simply, not as detailed as what you would in your design application Revit, but from a planning perspective, fantastic. So with my entire building selected, I'm going to go and say that this building is a commercial space. I'm then going to click on the floor plans. We get a different window pop up that shows me all of my floor plans on the left, and I can either all at once or one at a time update the floor plans. So I'm going to go down to the first floor and just select the first floor. On there, I'm going to use the line tool to say that I've got, I don't know, a lobby area in there. And then after that lobby area, perhaps there is a corridor that runs down here. And then perhaps there is a big old stairwell or something over here. Yes, I'm being very rough and ready. I can for the purpose of this demonstration. But it's just accurate, draw lines, arcs and circles, just like you would in Revit or AutoCAD. We can then select these individual spaces and tell Forma what they are. So I can say that this is the lobby, so it's a commercial space, and that unit type is going to be a corridor. This is a corridor, so I can select it and say that it's a corridor. And I'll also say that this is a corridor as well. So we can go in and start telling the floor plan what each space or unit, as they're known here, is going to be. And whilst I'm using the out-of-the-box options, you can extend residential, commercial, leisure. You can extend this and customize it the way that you want to. You'll notice in the 3D preview here, and in the 2D, and on the floor plan view, that that's changed just the first floor. What I'm going to do now is select the second floor all the way through to the 10th floor, with making sure I hold down the Shift key as I do it. And I'm going to select all those other floors and then say that all of those other floors have this same stairwell over here, and also this same corridor, but it runs full length. I'm then going to select those 2 rooms and say that, much like the other ones, they are corridors, so on and so forth. You can see that this has changed every floor plan. So you can do one at a time or in bulk. And it will come in and start allowing you to measure these. So I can start some measurement tools where I can say, show me a grid, make it this size, I want to snap to that grid, I don't, give me the areas that I'm working with, show me the lengths, let me pick up a ruler tool and start going around. You can control that and customize it as you see fit. Again, from my perspective, and the benefit of me doing these sessions is I don't need to work to that accuracy in this example today, but hopefully you can see that you could should you want to. So there I've got a basic building put together. Let's continue and do some more, because as well as adding a basic building, we also have some 3D sketching tools to maybe be a little bit more specific with regards to the shape or the size of the building that we want to add. So, for example, I can start a 3D sketch, and then with that 3D sketch, I can come in and draw maybe a very specifically shaped building using splines, using arcs, and using more curved components to make it more specific. So maybe right next to this one, let's go into a 2D view. Let's pick up my line tools, and this time I'm going to say I'm going to start with a line, and I'm going to draw a line all the way from the front here to the back over here. And then after that line, I'm going to go in and place an arc, going 3 points from there. That's clearly not an arc. Place an arc, thank you very much, from there over to here, and I'm just gonna, eyeball it in. I'm not being massively accurate at all with this, and then we're gonna go ahead and just draw a line and make a very odd shaped, I'm gonna call it the ice cream building. There we go, and I'm gonna place that in there. So something a little bit more specific. I can go into 3D, and I can select the shape that we've got. I'm just gonna turn off my terrain, because my enclosed loop, so long as it is actually a closed loop, let's make sure I've not left any gaps there. That would be annoying if I have. Has been known. And they are closed that side. Are these closed here? Yep, they're closed as well. And they're closed as well. Good. Have you picked up a face? No, you haven't. That's really frustrating. Let's just close that and put on an arc again, from there to there, click. Why are you not closing my loop? Is it my arc? Nope, you're just deciding that you don't want to be very nice. Let's try one more time. I had a few issues earlier just with some of the snapping was causing me a few problems, so let's just try and make sure that it is snapping to the points there. It's this last one it doesn't like, so let's do from there to there, and then another line to close it off. There we go. Not quite sure what it was doing there, but doesn't really matter. We can draw shapes. We can then select faces, and we can extrude those faces just like you would if you were working with a mass, for example, inside of Revit. So I can come and extrude this up and say that I want that to be 80 meters high. Again, pretty far-fetched and unrealistic, but we can do that. Once we've got this, then we could choose to sketch maybe a spline on one of the faces here, and I could draw maybe some weird and wacky curved roof. And against that curved roof, I can come and select, some of the different areas that we've got to be able to do a face extrusion to cut material away. So this here, I can then grab the extrude tool and pull that back through my building. So you can start to create, within reason, any kind of shape that you may want to inside of here. Now this building that I'm going through and creating, as soon as I say, okay, I'm done, Forma will look at that 3D conceptual shape that I've created, and it will allow me to convert that into a building. So it will look at it and it will want to split it into floors. So I can see that it's sort of done some faceted curvature for me. And I can go through and start going back into that building and selecting how many floors I want and what's the distance between the floors, just like you would if you'd have used one of those other tools. So once you've built it, we can split it into floors, and we can say that, we want to have clearly not that many floors, but we can add a number of floors and get it to split the building up into those floors. And again, the same functionality that you've just seen then exists. I can select a floor or multiple floors and change the floor plan or floor plans as I see fit. So we can draw lumps using primitive objects, or we can use a 3D sketch to start drawing more specific tools or more specific shapes. Let's turn our terrain back on. Now, the next thing that I might want to do is place some greenery around. So I'm going to go to my vegetation tool, and I'm going to choose to draw an area of trees. So from vegetation, I'm going to choose an area with trees. And again, I'll use my 2D view to make it a little bit more accurate. And I'm just going to roughly trace this kind of shape that looks a bit like that. Just to give me an area with some vegetation between maybe commercial space and maybe some residential space over here. And those trees can be selected. I can say that I want them to be 15 in height with a spread of 5 or 2 or whatever it might be. Let's go about 3. And we'll get something that looks like that. We could then maybe draw some roads. So I'm just going to draw some site roads around here and say that maybe we're going to use these tracks that are already there as a rough guide. So let's come along to about here, maybe follow those around to there, follow all the way along the front over here, and then maybe up and round like so. Very rough and very ready. Those roads can be selected, and with them they can then have traffic data associated to them. So you can start to say the percentage of traffic distribution across day, evening and night, specify heavy traffic amount, and then start to input based on actual noise facts or noise data that you anticipate, or that you know if it's an existing road. That will allow us to run some noise analysis for the site later on. So I've created a couple of buildings here. The next thing I want to do is maybe look at this space here. And I want to fit some residential information in there or some residential space, but I don't quite know what. And again, this is really where Forma for me comes into its own, because I can get it to explore for me. So let's get it to explore based on either freeform shape, a rectangle or a circle. I'm going to use a freeform shape, and I'm going to click here, here, and I'm going to follow the shape of this, right? So I'm just going to go around and roughly follow the shape of those roads, followed by return. And within seconds, Forma will give me a recommendation, or not a recommendation, that's the wrong word. Forma will suggest things that I could think about doing in this space. And you'll notice that it's given me 6 preview images along the bottom. Each one of those represents a different suggestion. And then I've got, in this case, 4 pages of different suggestions, which I can navigate through and start to select. Those selections are going to be based on the kind of rules that I've got over on the right-hand side. So on the right, I'm saying that I want to explore buildings, vegetation, and roads. If I turn off roads, it will remove them. If I turn off buildings, it will remove them, so on and so forth. I want to explore everything, so I'm going to leave them on. I can then tell Forma how big might I want the buildings, what sort of shape or size am I looking at doing. So let's just change some of these subtly. Let's go for 15 meters. We want to have 3 stories. I want to be by 15 again, so maybe 15 by 15 square, but let's bump them up to 20 in the width. Road size, 6 is fine. And I want to look at linear buildings, city blocks, tower buildings, and a mix. If you just want tower buildings, turn everything else off, and it will generate just tower buildings. If you just want city blocks, quite American terminology, I appreciate that, but come in and choose, and it will show you what options you've got based on your space. I'm just going to leave them all on, go with the default, but I will just up the spacing of the trees ever so slightly just to space them out, like so. I'm quite happy. That will do just fine for the purpose of this example today. Once I'm done, I can literally hit the cross and I now have buildings. Each one of these buildings can be worked on in the same way that this one and this one can. So I can select this building here, and I can say that this building is going to be a residential building. I could change its floor plan. This one, hold down Shift, and these ones over here are also going to be residential buildings. And I can go and change their floor plans one at a time or in bulk. So you've got that flexibility. I'm not going to show those functions again, but hopefully you get the appreciation and the idea about what it's doing. Maybe these are going to be a row of shops maybe for the estate. So I'm going to put those into commercial. And then let's just go around and select a few more of these and make them residential spaces. Again, I'm being very rough and ready. I'm not really being overly accurate or indeed thoughtful for anyone that might want to buy or use this building or space. But you get the idea. It's quick, and actually to start producing something like this, it's pretty easy. Now, once I've got this information and I've started to build up my site, I can get the system to give me feedback. So I'm going to say that, well, I've got two ginormous commercial buildings here and a number of other units and houses over here. What do I need to think about from a parking perspective? So I can go to my extensions and start the Autodesk parking demand calculator and get it to look at what I've designed and tell me how many parking spaces I need for that area. It's telling me that I need 573 and I've drawn 0. So maybe I want to draw another basic building like I did earlier. Maybe this time I'm going to draw a cube, and I'm going to place a cube that is just sat over here. So I'm going to do a 54-meter parking block. That's a little bit high. Let's go down to 20 meters by 20 meters by, no, I've changed the wrong ones. I still wanted those to be bigger. Never mind. There we go. So I'm going to draw a component like that, a building like that. And then against that, I can basically tell it that this is parking. So I'm going to go into my function, customize my functions to create a new one called parking. I'm going to make it a different color, because why would I not make it orange? And then I'm going to create the function. From there, I'm going to go ahead and select the building, make it parking, and then tell it from a function perspective that it is going to be parking. So against either one or all of the floor plans, I'm going to be lazy and choose all of them. I'm just going to press parking on over here. And it tells me that I can fit 240 spaces within that building. I can click on parking and customize the spaces. Spaces in the UK, in my opinion, are never wide enough. So I'm going to make them a little bit wider. I'm going to make them a little bit longer. Those people with giant SUVs, and I can customize these settings, and you'll notice that the preview is updating to give me a different input. It's not going to show me where the cars are coming in or out, but it's going to give me an indication of spaces that I can fit within that area. If we come out of there and look at my overall site, it says I've created 160 spaces, but I still need 413. So I'm going to start another extension, this time the third-party test fit parking extension. And I'm going to draw using a freeform pen in 2D mode, a big old ugly car park that spans the length of this space here. Let's see how many spaces we can fit in. Something like that. Hit enter, it will generate the car park. It starts showing me, based on where I started drawing, where I'm coming in and out. We can configure that and move that around should we need to. And this remains editable, so I can make this smaller, and it has a dynamic and direct effect on how many spaces we have and what's going on. I'm going to leave it giant for the purpose of this because I can. Now, with this third-party app, we can do the same thing as the Autodesk one. So I can come on to the parking configuration, but we just get a bit more flexibility. For example, I can come in here and start picking up accessible driving spaces. So I can make more room for accessible individuals. We've got a separate control for accessible vans as well as accessible cars. And we can come in here and start configuring and customizing all sorts, from the width of the drive aisle, let's make it bigger, the turn radius, let's make it bigger, and that all starts to have a knock-on effect to how many spaces we can fit. But again, that generative design aspect of show me what you're working with and I will give you some input based on what you're telling me, it goes and does it. So I now have a site that has ample parking for both guests and residents and workers of this site, which is great. So once I've started drawing things, and maybe I just want to connect some of these roads up so that my residential estate here can be driven on by the people that live there. I'm just going to make two connections just to show you that you can. We might want to start doing some feasibility study simulations on this. And I've got a number of options now in Forma, so we can start by doing some area metrics, as you saw, but we can also do things like sun hours or some basic solar analysis. So this is only external, it's not looking inside the building, unfortunately, but I can grab the sun hours. I can say I want to work with the entire site. I can pick and choose and deselect certain things if I want to. And then I can specify a month. So where are we? We are in cloudy, rainy April, although in the UK it's been cloudy, rainy year. I'm going to pick the same day and hit run. This will just literally take a few seconds. Again, it's not doing anything on my laptop. My laptop fan for once is really quiet, although I'm running on battery. So that needs to be figured out at some point. I don't know why I'm not charging. Something is unplugged under the desk, I think. That's a good spot. So that's now running an analysis in the background, and I can just leave it to do its thing. Alongside that, we can also do daylight potential. So I can run daylight potential and just say, do you know what? Run the analysis. And it will go and look at the potential daylight that I have. In my interface in the top right-hand side, I can see that I've got these icons that are currently flashing blue to show me that the analysis is running. And once the analysis is complete, it's going to, give me a pop-up up here, but also that analysis icon, that little round icon there, turns grey, and it shows you that, hey, that analysis is finished. I'm just going to go through and run a load of these. So sun hours, potential daylight. Let's do a wind one as well for the purpose of this demonstration. The wind analysis is based on a circle. I can move that circle where I want it. Let's purposely do it around these large buildings because they'll probably form some uncomfortable winds in high wind. And let's just up the radius here a little bit, like so. And again, very quickly, it goes ahead and it runs that analysis based on that input. It does a fairly quick analysis at first. I've just lost my monitor, so I can't see what you can see right now, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. It shows you a fairly quick analysis at first, so it will give you an indication of that area and say, oh, where might the wind be uncomfortable or slightly too strong. You've got the ability to click run a detailed analysis, and what that detailed analysis will do is take much longer, in this case 155 minutes or so, but it will do so in a much more detailed way, and the results that you get will be far more detailed than otherwise. I think there's another charger outside the room on the floor. So you can run a more detailed analysis if you want to. We don't have time to run all of these today, but you can do a microclimate analysis. We can go ahead and do embodied carbon, operational energy, so on and so forth. And actually all of these require certain inputs, and we can come in and select those inputs and work with them. So I could select this building here. I could go and run an embodied carbon analysis on this building, which needs me to choose the building type. So I can say that this is a, what did I say this was? A residential space, and that residential space envelope is, I still have no power in, yes I do, thank you, I'm back online. The envelope is cladded, and we're going to say it's brick veneer, and the brick to wall ratio is around 33%, and then the structure, I'm just going to do a hybrid concrete steel. And then when it runs the analysis, it will take the inputs and it will start telling you the embodied carbon for that specific building. Naturally, you would go around and do this on the whole site, but you get an appreciation of what it's doing. It's a very quick way to start looking at some feasibility and seeing what the application gives you. Again, here's your daylight. So this is giving our daylight potential. Clearly, we've got some areas that are not going to be very good for daylight, but some areas that are going to be very good for daylight. And the same thing is true of our sun hours analysis. We can open up the sun hours, look at the history, and go and run or view the results of that previous run. And it's just going to show you how many hours a given area with the shading is in the sun. And clearly we've got some that are purposefully badly designed for this example, so there's no sun, and some areas that are very good sun. And we can move the time of day to see that update dynamically. We can do shadow analysis, which will export the images at given points throughout the day to get information. We can share analysis with emails so that they can view this without a subscription. We can also probe certain areas to get some feedback, should we want to look at where might be a good position for some solar panels, for example. In the UK, nowhere, it's always cloudy, but you get the idea. We've got some good feedback where we can very quickly run some studies and get some results. I said about the noise, the solar energy I've just mentioned, shadow study, I've mentioned it. I'm just going to run it quickly. Go, you'll see the shadows moving at different times throughout the day. And again, we just choose our time and date range and we can export those as an image. So what else can we do? So let's say that I want to get a render of this potential site. I'm going to go to my extensions and I'm going to open the Evolve Lab plugin, third-party plugin by Evolve Lab. I'm running a trial, 30 renders is what it's going to let me do. And it will take the camera position or camera angle that I've got for my site, like so. And it will use that for the camera position for any render. And it's all AI driven. So I can come in and say what I want to render. So I'm just going to say, maybe I want to do this concept render creative. I can go to compose and I can say, I don't want you to override the geometry. I want you to keep the geometry kind of as it is, or I don't care, make it look good and override it. So let's go with about 40 odd. Feel free to override all the materials. I'm going to say it is an aerial view and I can give it a prompt. So I can tell the artificial intelligence what I want to see. And I'm going to say, that'll do, exterior shot of a utopian architecture building. But you can type anything in there should you want to. I'm going to press render, give this a couple of seconds and it will generate an AI image. There's a lot of conspiracy, not conspiracy, that's the wrong word. There's a lot of bad press about this kind of AI generated image, but for what it's trying to do, you know, go ahead and look at different areas and different pictures and look at what I've made and give me an image. That's really clever what it's done. I mean, I've just pressed go and do it and it's placed some curtain walling here, around here it's using the kind of shapes that I've used and it's done a pretty good job. I'm actually fairly pleased with that. And what's really nice is once you've got that, you can edit it. So I can refine it and I can go ahead and choose an area. So maybe I'm going to choose an area over here, like so. And with that area, I'm going to say that this is an aerial view, the seaside with boats, and say render. Again, use your imagination, obviously be realistic, but this tool is quite clever. I'm showing you it because I'm showing Forma and I want to give you a good indication of what this technology is all about. It's modern, it's exciting, it's allowing you to do things that would otherwise take a very long time, and it's allowing you to do them pretty easily. So I think I'm actually going to get my my thing sat on an island, but let's give it a second to go ahead and do it. Has it done it? It's put a little bit of beach in there. You can just about see here the C. So it's okay. It does a good job. So I can get a render. I can also push this out to Revit. And this is where the workflow gets really interesting, because I can, with my Revit extension, go to my navigator and I can push it out to Revit. But before I do so, maybe I want to duplicate my proposal one. And oops, too many. And maybe with my duplicate of proposal one, maybe what I want to do is say, nah, that's horrible. Nah, that's horrible. But this area of trees is really nice. Let's make it bigger. We can come in and do that. So I can look at my different proposals. I could then rerun maybe a wind analysis in the same area. Go ahead and do it. Let it think about life for a few seconds. Sounds gone robotic. Okay, any better? About the same. Interesting. Dropping a few frames here. Okay. I'll have a look at that in a second. Is it still audible? Just about. Okay. Apologies for the audio. I've got a few issues apparently with my connection. I'm going to stick with it. So we make a change, we do another study, and then I've got the ability to maybe come and compare those two studies. So I could get proposal one and pick that and put it here, and proposal two and get that and put it here. It hasn't picked up my wind analysis in either of them, but I could pick up my sun hours on the left, go and run sun hours on the right, and have a 3D or 2D comparison of those two components, and let it do its thing, which is quite nice. So we've got the ability to compare. And then once you've compared, we've got the ability to choose a proposal, proposal one in my case, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to say send to Revit. Simple as that, job done. I'm then going to open up Revit. I'm going to start a brand new file using just a default off-the-shelf construction template, and I'm just going to tell it to pull. Maybe before I do so, I want to turn that Plex Earth imagery back on. I don't know why it keeps turning off for some reason. Let's give it a few seconds. Audio any better? No, okay. Once this is importing to Revit, I'll just try and fix the audio quickly. I might just kill the stream and bring it back, but let's just get it doing what it needs to do. There's that. Lovely. Fantastic. Let's go to our navigator and send to Revit. We then go into Revit and we go to our massing and site tab and we just say load proposal. That'll go ahead and look for the proposal that we've just exported from Forma, and it will go and pull it in. Now, whilst that's doing that, I'm just going to try and fix this audio, so I'm going to go off camera and come back on for a second. But before I do so, we can go to options. I wouldn't recommend that you use the top option, which is creating floors, walls, and roofs. Just use the massing tools, hit OK, and hit load. That's going to take a few minutes to load, and while we're doing that, I'm just going to run over here and put my headphones on and just see what's going on with my voice. I definitely sound choppy. So I'm going to keep talking. Apologies for the issues. And this will just take a few minutes or so. Sounds like the audio is better. Apologies. This will just take a few minutes to load that information back into Revit from Forma. Depending on the complexity of your site, it might take several minutes. It might, in this case, it's going to take about a minute and 30. And it also now depends on your hardware, your local machine, because with your local machine, what it's doing is it's now using Revit, although it's downloading that data and it's using Revit for that data. So we'll give it a few minutes, and what we actually get is a pretty good result. We get a nice topo that is actually a Revit topo that we can use and we can edit and we can tweak and we can work with. And then we get the buildings as masses. We get the roads as, I think they come in as site, what are they called? Site, I can't think of the name. Sight lines. I'm going to say sight lines. There's another word for it. It's site limit lines or something like that. But they'll come in and we can use those should we need to. But the real beauty here is that we can take any of those components and we can edit them, and then we can push that data back into Forma. So if you imagine that you do a master plan, rather than getting a PDF and doing some redline markup of some hatched boxes and squares and then developing that, we can do these master plans in Forma potentially using some of the tools that we've just seen. We can then develop those, create different proposals, do a load of feasibility studies, chop and change, and get to a point where we're fairly happy with the master plan. And then if we need to create some more detailed information for pre-planning or whatever it might be, we can then bring that information into Revit and start developing. If we've used Forma in very early stage and we get the go-ahead and we're working, we can use that data inside of Revit to start our detailed designs. I've got a couple of warnings which I'll do because we've got overlapping components probably. But what we have is something that looks like this. So we've got our model and it's looking pretty good. So here's my design. You can see that the masses have come across with floors. You can see that it's got all of the levels. So we actually have Revit levels for each one of those floors. And we've got our topo, which is Revit topo. And we can come in and develop this in any way, shape or form. I'm purposely going to come and pick one of the smaller buildings. But I'm going to use the building make tools under massing and site to say that I want to draw some walls. I'll just use a generic basic good old default wall in Revit and just select these three walls like so. Happy days. I'm then going to use a curtain system on the front. Create system, absolutely fine. And then I'm going to go ahead and use a roof, and I'm going to place a roof on there. A basic flat roof is fine. Create roof. Lovely. The world's most detailed buildings. Let's go ahead and pick up a floor. I'm just going to use this same upper floor for all of them. I'm going to pick up you, and from here, you, and massing a site, floor, thank you, and you. That'll do. So I'm going to place my my floors. We've got a few overlaps. I don't really mind. But what I want to do is show something that doesn't exist in Forma. So I'm actually just going to go to architecture and place some mullions, something really simple. Place mullions on this this curtain system on the front here. And let's now say that I want to go to massing and site, and I'm going to send that proposal back to Forma. So I'm just going to click update, use my 3D view to generate the 3D model, and go ahead and say okay. And what this will do is it will take anything that I've added in Revit and it will create a new Forma building for what I've added. So rather than updating the Forma components, those Forma components will remain the same, but my newly generated, let's just flick off of it and flip back on again. My newly created Revit building will now feature inside of Forma. So my buildings here, if I turn off the Forma buildings, I've got my Revit building. And you can see if I zoom in that we have, yes, a very messy Revit building, but I can see that I've got my mullions, I've got my roof and my walls and my floors all overlapping. But we've got that, and we've got that round trip, the ability to come in and start developing those Revit buildings, bringing them back into Forma, doing some more daylight, doing some more feasibility with those slightly more developed Revit models, and actually doing something rather nice. And really, it's kind of all I wanted to show today, to be completely honest with you. I've been playing around with it for the past probably 2 weeks, just trying to, let's get it to follow me around again, this camera, just trying to get it to do something for me and work the way that I want it to work, and get something that shows you guys all the different options, how to use it, how to drive it, what it can do, what it might not do, and give you an appreciation of what the technology does. Again, I'll use the example that I used earlier. If I think 15 years ago, Autodesk Fusion releases a technology preview inside the product design suite, as it was known back then, as a very early, preview build of something special. And what I can see with this is, with all of the fantastic tools that we had inside of Spacemaker and everything else that they've developed on top of that, is something that's actually paving quite a nice picture for the design space and working in the Autodesk construction industry moving forward. The fact that I can do some master planning digitally like this with some feasibility studies, ping that to Revit, do some editing, send it back to Forma, get some generatively designed site spaces to give me some input as to what I could fit in a location. I think it's great. I like it a lot. And hopefully you've liked what you've seen as well. So really, that's it. So thank you ever so much for joining us this afternoon. I do hope it's been useful. For those of you watching on Zoom, if you want to watch it again, it's already on our YouTube channel because we're broadcasting live on YouTube. So go ahead, check it out. Remember to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and check out the other content that we've got. But thank you very much for taking some time out of your busy schedules this afternoon. Sorry for the few technical issues that we had. No equipment, apologies. I don't think it interrupted things too much. But yeah, until next time, take care and see you soon. Goodbye.